Hello everybody, this is Mithril Zenith, and today I've been meaning to talk about something, and I figured, let's just talk about it. That something is centralizing design, is what I call centralizing design. That's when one option is just far and away the most powerful thing, or at the very least is part of a subset of things that are the most powerful thing that really transform the way that everything else is around it, and either make all those things obsolete, or at the very least, you're only looking at those things through the lens of this better thing. Why do I have Mordor at the Depths of Dejenol pulled up? Because this is probably the easiest one to explain, the Vampire Fang. So the Vampire Fang is a dagger in Mordor at the Depths of Dejenol that you can find as early as floor 9, and as soon as you find a Vampire Fang, you're highly unlikely to be using any other weapons, aside from like 1 or maybe 2, depending on your class, until the end game. You can find this as early as dungeon floor 9. The dungeon has 15 floors, so just over halfway through the dungeon, you can find this weapon, and then you won't really need anything else. Why is this so good? Well, let's go over it real quick. 21 attack, 0 defense. The 0 defense kind of sucks. 1.7 damage mod. 1.7 is very good. Only like two-handed swords and endgame swords are better than this. Pretty reasonable requirements, nothing crazy. All race, guild, class combinations can use this. One-handed item, so you can use a shield if your class allows shields. 4 swings, and innate backstab. And it counts as a floor, I think it's like floor 13 item for the case of its backstab level that it gives, and hurting through weapon immunity. So it hits through any weapon immunity. There's nothing that this will not deal damage against. And it's a dagger, so it's not class restricted. That's the big one. Not class restricted. NCR means that if you have at least one available guild of the level to use it, any one of your guilds can use it no matter their level. And the nomad requirement for level is only 111. That is very, very, very good considering Mithril Dagger, the next step down, or a couple steps down, not class restricted, is 73, and the closest thing, the Saber Blade, the other closest thing you'll get to it, is only 102, so only 9 more levels, and you get the Vampire Fang. Now, I mentioned that there are 1 or 2 other weapons that you might want to consider, and those are I believe it's this one, the Cross of Commanding, which is only usable by magic classes, but has the same damage mod, much lower attack, but gives some defense, gives some constitution, has a ton of charges of Abolish Undead at spell level 105, and still gives the one-handed 4 swings. The one thing the Cross of Commanding doesn't do is I think it counts as like a dungeon floor 6 or 7 item, so it can't hurt monsters in the deepest floors in melee. Maybe it's even like level 5, I forget. But that is the second in contention for actually worthwhile weapon. And the third is the Avenger. 131 warrior, two-handed, 3 swings, critical hit, 15 and 3, 2.3 damage mod. So you're giving up a swing, you're giving up your offhand for your shield, which is a big deal. But you're getting a massive extra damage multiplier. 2.3. 2.3, because this is an exponential system, is way stronger than 1.7. But you're giving up a lot of stuff, and so it's a reasonable, argument of which one's better. And this you can find as a rare drop in floor 7 from the Butcher. So you can find it earlier. Generally, you'll need to be a higher level, and it's only usable by like warrior, paladin, nomad, ninja seeker, villain, and it's class restricted, so you have to be in those classes. So, once again, the Vampire Fang, in my opinion, wins out. I mostly started making this video, or started plotting this video, because people were asking me for, like, a tier list of weapons in Mordor the Depths of Dejenol, and I think that it just is clear. It's the Vampire Fang is the S+ tier. And then everything else is S tier, or is like, you know, endgame tier, where it's like, okay, you have some great weapons, like the Staff of Destruction. It's insanely good, but it also requires like level 300 plus to use. And so it's like, yeah, it's great once you get there, but before you get there, you're using the Vampire Fang. The Vampire Fang helps you level up any other lower level guild. And if we want to talk about why that's centralizing, because it's like, okay, right off the bat, you can say, well, that's a really good weapon, but, you know, maybe it's rare. No, it's not actually super rare. You can go to floor 9, you can fight the vampire, grind him enough, he'll eventually drop it. It's a set item drop. And you say, well, maybe the other items are comparable, but just slightly better. Not even. Like, okay. Let's look at Mithril Sword. Okay, Mithril Sword is a tier lower. One-handed, 3 swings, it's 1.6, can critical hit. Okay. So that seems like, okay, the Vampire Fang is the next step up. So what if we went to, like, the Sword of Slaying? That's the next tier. It's kind of a similar tier weapon to the Vampire Fang, right? Well, not only does it require higher guilds, but it has lower attack. It has some defense, which is a plus, but fewer swings, gives critical hit instead of backstab, and the exact same damage mod. So much more restrictive. Higher level, class restricted. What are you doing? Oh, whoops. That was not the button I want to press. Let's see another thing. Well, what about maces? The Mace of Disruption. That's, you know, fancy legendary weapon. That doesn't drop until like floor 12. One-handed item, 3 swings, 15 and 0, 1.8, so you get a very slight increase in damage mod, you get some innate critical hit, but again, higher level requirement, class restricted, even more restrictive on the allowed guilds than the Avenger. What are you doing? And centralizing design isn't even just limited to, like, weapons, limited to old games. I've been meaning to talk about it, but I haven't been able to find the right way to put it, is that stuff in, like, Fire Emblem, because I talk about Fire Emblem all the time on this channel. Fire Emblem's not immune to it either. Look at Paladins, any sort of mounted units, but especially Paladins and Wyverns. Across most games, they are centralizing. They are so good, so powerful, that everything else is rated in reference to Paladins. Like, the fact that Swordmasters are called Footlock Swordlocked is because of Paladins, because Paladins are not Footlocked and are not Swordlocked, and therefore are better even if they have lower stats. Wyverns are so centralizing because they have great strength and defense, and great move, and generally reasonable speed. The fact that 3 houses, while I don't think it's the optimal build, that you can still send most units into Wyvern and that ends up being their best class if they're a physical unit, particularly if they're an axe or lance wielding unit. It's just so good. It's centralizing design. Why would you do anything else unless you have a very particular reason to be in that niche? Like, okay, Sniper, I can see it. Bow Knight, you can have some fun with that. What else is there? Swordmaster for Astra? Hero? Are you going to do a hybrid class and be a mortal savant? Be fancy like that? No. You're gonna be a Wyvern. If you are using an axe or a lance, you're gonna be a Wyvern. That's just kind of how it is. Great Knight? Why? Why bother? Why slow yourself down just to get a little extra defense when the Wyvern already has that covered, and 3 houses is not a game that you can out-defense in the late game? So yeah, what are your thoughts on centralizing design? Do you think that it's a problem? Do you think that it's just a fact of life? Do you think that these games need to take a closer look at it? maybe, pay attention for the future and make some changes. I think, in my opinion, I like having games where every niche has value, regardless of whether it's like the general best or not. And you can have stuff that's the most general purpose effective option. I'm not saying you shouldn't. That's like in some ways a good thing to have. You want to have benchmarks. You want to have solid things to reference, solid things that are kind of, I guess for lack of a better term, idiot proof. But at least let other things have a useful niche. The Vampire Fang is so good that the only more useful niches you can argue are for things that either do its job way earlier or hit for way harder. And that's kind of it. Wyverns, they fly and can dismount when flying isn't helpful. They can do pretty much anything, and because of the way the weapon structure is in Three Houses, unless you want to be a mage, you're probably going to lean towards Wyvern, unless you want to be a mage, or use a particular combat art that's notable, or like be a brawler, because brawlers can't fly. Those are the only reasons why you wouldn't want to be a Wyvern. Even archers, unless they specifically want like Hunter's Volley from Sniper, or the extra range from Bow Knight, end up just being Wyverns, and being better as Wyverns. But anyway, I've talked too much on this. Leave a like, let me know what your thoughts on centralizing design are in the comments down below, and until next time, this is Mithril Zenith signing out. Peace.